Hello, my name is Albert Barrocas, and I am a charter member of ASPEN. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary, and as part of that celebration, we're trying to reach out to some of our earlier members to sort of grasp a little bit of the history. I'm very proud and privileged today to have my good friend, Dr. Ronni Chernoff, who was one of the founders, really, of ASPEN in the 1975-76 era. And so I have a series of questions for her. But by disclosure, and also in a way to let you know the value of ASPEN, it was through ASPEN that I established a great lifelong relationship with Ronni. And we have shared many good moments together. She has attended many of our family activities, etc. So she has been a mentor, not only in nutrition support, Ronni, but also in the arena of geriatric nutrition that I want to explore a little bit more. But to begin with, what got you interested in nutrition?
That's an interesting story. I got interested in nutrition when I was in high school, and I had a chemistry teacher who had worked at Campbell's Soup and developed the flavor for cream of celery soup. And I thought, and my 15-year-old self thought it was the most fascinating thing I had ever heard. So I got interested in nutrition. I went to Cornell University, got a bachelor's degree in nutrition, did a dietetic internship at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, ended up with two master's degrees from Columbia University. One was a Master of Science in Nutrition, the other was a Master of Education in Nutrition. And I worked in metabolic research and then moved across the street. I was at Cornell and I moved across the street to Memorial Sloan Kettering to work in nutrition support with Dr. Maurice Schills. And we were, I believe, the only dietitians who were actually mixing TPN solutions and making tube feeding from scratch.
What year were you talking?
1973. And I got involved with ASPEN because the American Medical Association had something called the Clinical Nutrition Advisory Group, the chairman of which was Dr. Parker Van Amme, who was at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And there was an organizing meeting, I guess in 1974, and I was the closest research dietitian to Washington, D.C. And so I got elected to attend. And that was the organizing meeting where the whole, concept of ASPEN came about. Mitch Kaminsky was there, George Blackburn was there, Maurice Schills was there. And there are probably, it was a very long time ago, so I'm not sure I remember everybody, but that was the meeting that spurred the very first establishment of what was to become ASPEN.
Very interesting. How do you become interested in the geriatric nutrition that came later on?
Yeah, that's another story. I was recruited at one point to go leave Memorial Sloan Kettering and go to the University of Pennsylvania by James Mullen. And I went down there and became very interested in education. I had been invited over many years to attend. It was always the physicians and Ronni. And while I was at Penn, I started working on my PhD, which was in health professions education. I figured if I was going to be doing it, I might as well know what I was doing. And I earned my PhD there. But in the interim, I had been chairman of the dietitians committee of ASPEN and on the board of directors. And someplace in there, I became secretary of the board. And so I was on the executive committee, which was a real education with Stan Dudrick. I think Stan Dudrick was at that original meeting as well, and maybe James Long. And I became interested in geriatrics when I finished my PhD, and I was recruited here by Dr. David Lipschitz
Here,
at
meaning where?
the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. And during that early period of time, they were doing a lot of stuff in geriatric nutrition. And the very first summer that I worked here at UAMS, I think John Rombo, who may have also been at that very first meeting, asked David to write a chapter. Maybe it wasn't John Rombo, maybe it was Dr. Shills, had asked David Lipschitz to write a chapter for his book on geriatric nutrition. And David asked me if I would write it. And I literally spent the first 6 months that I was here immersed in textbooks in geriatrics, learning about and putting together the whole concept of how geriatrics, aging, and nutrition integrated with each other. And that was how I really became interested in it, because what everybody else was doing was really social aspects of aging and not the biological aspects of aging and how nutrition fit into that. And so that very first summer in 1983 that I worked here, I literally did a self-crash course on geriatrics and nutrition. And the rest, as they say, is history.
But you still maintain your very active role being on the board of directors of ASPEN and being secretary. Why did you not ascend to, vice president or whatever it was at the time, or president-elect or president?
The rules didn't allow it. They wanted either an MD or I guess a PhD, and the rules to allow other degrees didn't change until 1994, and the rules to allow other disciplines than physicians didn't change until 1998. And I was busy being president of the Dietetic Association at the time, so I just moved on.
What year were you president of the ADA?
96, 97.
I see. Well, thank you very much for that service.
Oh, you're very welcome. You got to be an honorary member.
Yes, thanks to you and Sue and Mary Tenore from Louisiana, etc. Now, along the way, you were still in a parallel track with the American Dietetic Association. And so my question to you is, you became president. Did you see that as a conflict? Do you see that as a positive thing? Because you maintain activities in both societies.
No, I think it was enhancement, actually, both ways, because I brought a perspective to being president of the American Dietetic Association, now known as the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the dietitians, all the dietitians who were members of ASPEN. Along the way, I had started a couple of dietetic practice groups, one of which was Dietitians in Nutrition Support.
Very active.
Yes, and they grew very fast. It has been very active, and a lot of the dietitians in ASPEN also rose through those same ranks. So I saw it as very enhancing, supportive, collaborative, and an opportunity for people to gain a lot of professional experience doing two things that actually matched very well. I mean, I think that most of the dietitians in ASPEN are members of the Academy and
Yes.
the practice group.
Now, going back to your early days, you worked with Maurice Shields, and Dr. Shields, to me, was sort of a champion of enteral nutrition. How did you get into mixing? How were you received in TPN mixing by your fellow pharmacists at Memorial?
They didn't want to do it.
This is 1973?
Yeah, 73, 74, 75. The pharmacists just weren't interested in doing it. And they assigned a pharmacist to our team, and he used to come into our office, put his feet up on the desk, and watch us doing the mixing. which we thought was particularly unnerving, to say the least.
Did you have a laminar flow hood at that time, or?
Yeah, we did. We had a whole cart set up. Actually, the funniest thing that ever happened was that I dropped a bottle of D50 and my shoes stuck to the floor.
Are there any other historical highlights that you remember in the early days, or any triumphs or any hurdles, anything that you can recall?
Well, in Enteral, we were really the head of the pack. And how I got to know Sue Calvert Finn was that they asked us to analyze Ensure Plus. And I sat down to do some of the calculations, and it was very clear to me that it was all that they had done was taken out some of the water. They just concentrated it and took out some of the water. And when I told her that, she told me that I was the only one who had figured that out. So I guess not a lot of people had looked into it at the time.
Excellent. As you look towards the future, how do you see ASPEN, and then how do you see the whole field of nutrition support?
Well, I think that Aspen has an opportunity to really integrate a lot of what we know about both emergency medicine and critical care medicine, and what we know about nutrition. And there are a lot of trace minerals, trace nutrients, delivery systems. I had at one time, when I was at Penn, I was working as a consultant for one of the formula companies, and I had pumps and bags dripping in my kitchen to evaluate some of the mechanics of it. One of the things that I have always been most pleased about with Aspen has been the integration of all of the different disciplines, pharmacy and dietetics in particular. The nurses tended to be more job related, and they would come and go. There was an exodus and an entry that was sort of on a continual loop. But the dietitians and the pharmacists tended to stay longer, and develop relationships among themselves that turned out to be very positive in many professional ways. People learning about each other. It made me very interested in interdisciplinary training. My doctoral research was on, oh, here's the title. It was Psychological Androgyny and Role Expectations in Students Entering Opposite Sex Dominated Health Professions.
Wow.
And I looked at nursing, medicine, pharmacy, and dietetics. And it was really fascinating to see how they viewed each other. You know, the perceptions that different health professionals have of each other is very tribal, very interesting.
But do you feel that nowadays those barriers are breaking down a bit? Even with I think Aspen was the leader in this multidisciplinary to transdisciplinary to interdisciplinary, and a term that I learned from you, but you won't acknowledge every time I ask you, is this concept of transdisciplinarity, which means cross functioning, and is so valuable in nutrition support teams. If you don't have a dietitian, but the pharmacist is well done, you demonstrated that by mixing TPN in 1973. So as early as 1973, we were experiencing transdisciplinarity, where the function, not the form, was what led to the success of delivering the care to the patient at the bedside.
Yeah, it was well, we did it because the pharmacist didn't want to, and we had already been mixing enteral feedings. We were making tube feedings from scratch before there was anything really on the market. Sustacal, I think, was the only thing that was available in those days.
Right.
And Dr. Schills had a conception that there was way more to nutrition than Sustacal. And so we made we made tube feedings from scratch. And since we were already doing that, when we started doing TPN, it was just a natural transition for us.
Great. Well, before we close, and I'm going to ask you for additional comments, I want to sort of rattle your brain a little bit, your memory. You and I were on several forums, but there was one meeting down in Florida. I think it was
I know where you're going with this.
we were in Tampa, I think, or Clearwater, and the next morning we were sitting there getting ready to speak, and you were telling me how difficult it was for you to get to the hotel the night before. I said I didn't have any problem at all, and then you showed me your map, and sure enough, you had read the map upside down in the middle of the night when you landed or whatever. So that's one of the many of the fun times that we had. And
Yes.
I thank Aspen first, because it was Aspen that brought us together. And I
It's with
thank
the
you
first
for all
clinical
your
con-
friendship for all those years and the many invitations you gave me to your great symposia in Arkansas. My interest in geriatric nutrition, but in major part from you, from Sue Finn, from the Nutrition Screening Initiative, and now at my age, I'm the benefit of what we were preaching, and I hope that younger generations continue to support us old folks.
Well, your friendship, we met at the very first clinical congress. I remember that. Antigone Letsu introduced us.
Yes, I remember
Uh,
Antigone.
yeah, may she rest in peace.
Yes, she was
And
great.
over the years, so we've been friends for 50 years.
Right?
And I love your family. You have a fabulous family. Not only that, but in a way, I guess I'm sort of related because I introduced one of your sons to one of my students,
Right?
and they ended up marrying,
Exactly. Exactly. And we're
which
very
was
thankful for
great.
that. She's a wonderful daughter-in-law, and I told her we're going to have this interview, and she was all excited because we have a Zoom call with the family every Sunday at 5, and then we're on it. So, uh, Ronnie, I really want to thank you for your time, for all your contributions to Aspen, and for allowing us this time to reminisce. I know you're not planning on being there in Columbus, but you will be very, very well thought of, and with the help of the Aspen staff, maybe we'll have this little snippet of history that will not go unrecognized. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you so very much for thinking of me and including me in this. It's been a while, and I miss you.